Okay, so you've invested in some fabric and maybe you have a pair of fabric scissors and you're interested in making a quilt. And you've noticed that other people use rotary cutters and different shapes and sizes of acrylic rulers, and they have a cutting mat. So you wonder, do you need to invest in all of that to create your quilt blocks and make a quilt? So the simple answer is no, you don't. You could cut all of your quilt blocks with a pair of scissors. But I'm here to tell you, if you are able to invest in them and it does fit your budget, I would definitely recommend getting them, because it will make your quilting a lot easier, because using the rotary cutters and acrylic rulers and mat is much more accurate and much faster. So stay tuned, keep on watching, and I will demonstrate for you the 2 different ways you can cut your fabric. Okay, so the very first thing you're going to want to do with your fabric before you start cutting it is iron it, press it, get it as smooth as possible, as many wrinkles out as you can. Now, the very first quilt, well, maybe not the very first quilt I made, but one of the first quilts I made was a jean quilt, and I really had a lot of trouble cutting that quilt with my rotary cutter. So this is how I cut that quilt. I made a template of the size blocks I wanted, and then I pinned the template, which was just paper, to the jeans. And then I cut around it. So when I use fabric scissors, that tends to be the method I go to for cutting my blocks. So this is a 5-inch block, and I have the fabric doubled over. And so I'm gonna keep it as flat as I can and cut. Now, there is of course going to be better ways to do this than mine, but this is just the way that I've always done it. And I try not to move the fabric as much as possible, because that's just gonna shift everything and make it more likely that you won't have an exact 5-inch block. So I'm gonna try to get under here. And if you notice, the reason I definitely recommend fabric scissors is that they get a little bit flatter with your surface, and it helps you get a little better, more accurate cuts. So there you go. So that is 2 5-inch blocks. And I actually have an acrylic ruler that is a 5-inch ruler, and we'll put it on here, and I'll be sure to get in closer, but hopefully you can see that right along here, when I went up here and cut, it's just a little bit off. So you could either put this back down and see it must have shifted up a little bit, because I can see that a little better now. I could pin it again and turn it, but now it's a little off up here. But you can try to get it a little more accurate if you like. It's just really hard to get under here and keep all these different layers straight. So I didn't really get much better than that. Now, and this is perfectly okay. You can really, you can sew this, and you can join your seam. I mean, it's getting into a lot more things, but pin it and join your seams and kind of make it work for you. So, you know, that's just, it takes a little bit longer, I think, when you are using scissors, because, and you're just not going to get as accurate of cuts as you could see when I put the acrylic ruler on. Okay, so after cutting those other blocks with scissors, I realized this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 inch square, and I used this square to measure the template that I used to cut the other blocks with fabric scissors. So I'm going to actually be cutting 6 inch blocks here on this fabric, just so that we can easily compare to what I cut before. Okay, so with that said, let me show you how quickly and accurately you can cut blocks with a rotary cutter. So I'm going to make sure that the fold in my fabric is lined up with a line on my mat. And then I'm going to square up this side, meaning I'm going to do a cut here to make sure everything is nice and straight. And to do that, I'm going to line up this line on the ruler with the fabric and the line on my mat so that I know it's nice and straight. And I'm going to make my cut. Now you want to make sure your rotary cutter is nice and sharp. You should only have to go across your fabric once. I didn't cut all the way there. Now, one thing that I always like to do is make sure my mat is sitting somewhere where I can turn it. So that I don't have to lift up the fabric, because the more you lift up your fabric, the less accurate your cuts may be, because you're going to shift your 2 layers of fabric. So now I am going to cut a 6 inch block. So what I do is make sure a line on my ruler is lined up with the fabric. I make sure that line, that side that I cut, that a line is lined up there. I'm going to make sure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I am at 6. I don't want to mess up. Hold your ruler nice and firm and make your cut. And I always pull away the fabric that I'm not using. If you're going to make multiple cuts, you would just lift up your ruler and measure up along the cut you make and do your next cut. Now, this is my folded end. I have cut these 2 sides so I know they're straight. However, I haven't cut this side down here yet. So I'm going to rotate. Let me see, which side do I want to rotate to? So I'm going to square off this end here. So when I say square off, that means I'm going to straighten it out, make sure that it's a nice straight cut. And then I'm going to turn back here, and I'm going to start measuring my 6 inch blocks. So I always make sure there's lines that measure up with everything to make sure it's all straight. So I'm at 6 inches here, and just like that, I have 2 blocks. I'm going to measure again. And then I have 4 blocks. Then measure again. And 6 blocks. So I have 6 blocks here that I cut that quickly with the rotary cutter. And then I can put my acrylic ruler on here that is 6 inches and see how accurate everything is. Okay, and the more accurate your block cuts are, the easier it is to meet up seams in your quilt and have everything look nice and even. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you decide if you'd rather cut your quilt blocks with fabric scissors or with a rotary cutter. So be sure to subscribe to my channel and tune back in, because I'm going to be showing you all the steps it takes to create a beautiful quilt.